Well, thank you again, everybody, for joining us today. And it's so wonderful to see all of you here with us. And we have a wonderful program today, but we always begin these with a reflection. So I invite you to settle in, take a few deep releasing breaths, and relax. And I will now read you a blessing for religious leaders from John O'Donohue, from his book, To Bless the Space Between Us. There's nothing to do or grasp, just let your guard down for a minute and let this seep into your cells as a blessing that heals and nourishes. And after the blessing, we'll have a moment or two of silence. May the blessing released through you cause windows to open in darkened minds. May the challenges your calling brings be but winter before spring. May the companionship of your doubt restore what your beliefs leave out. May the secret hungers of your heart harvest from emptiness sacred fruit. May your solitude be a voyage into the wilderness and wonder of the holy. May your words have the prophetic edge to enable the heart to hear itself. May the silence where your calling dwells foster your freedom in all you do and feel. May you find words full of divine warmth to clothe the dying in the language of dawn. May the slow light of your community be a sure shelter around your future. So in just a few minutes, we'll have a time for connecting in some small groups with other faith leaders, after which we'll hear from our main speaker today, Elaine Tokolahi. First, however, we have a guest who can only join us for the first portion of our program. Chantel Walker is Assistant Director of Marin County Library Services, and she is also leading a working group of faith leaders who've started meeting to discuss how faith communities can reopen as part of the county's faith-based Marin Recovers initiative. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us today and for sharing with us what we can know about this new initiative and Marin Recovers.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Scott, thank you so much for letting me join you. It's been good to be here with you and to connect. We've known each other for a bit. One of the things that I'd really like to start with is the idea of what Marin Recovers is and how it connects to the shelter in place, what my role is, and then I'll just say those few words and open it up to see if folks have questions that I can answer. If I can't answer those questions, we'll take them back to the working group and keep them with us. And I'm very lucky, and we're all very lucky to have Scott there as a part of the working group and as someone that I turn to say, so here's what I'm thinking, what do you think, to get feedback and things like that. So he's also, I feel like, a direct channel, and maybe there are others who are in MIC, but he's a direct channel, you know, from the group to you all. So the purpose of the working group is to collect best practices locally and nationally from a cross-section of faith traditions, and to think about how, as the shelter in place eases, how Marin might approach that. So a locally specific set of components. Now, Marin Recovers, luckily, has a very robust website. We're adding names and information and documents to it all the time. And it does have a faith-based page. And in a little bit, I'll just drop that into the chat. But that Marin Recovers website is really the overall place of the why we're moving forward, what the stages are, the how we're moving forward in different industry groups. And the faith-based group is an industry group. And then the when of each industry group having authorization to move forward. Our faith-based industry group is fairly representative of a cross-section of the religions locally. There's a component of folks who are Protestant and Catholic and Buddhist and Islamic, and we have some names on the website. The UCC is there with us. It's not a representative of each group. In theory, the group is supposed to be 5 to 8 people, but I really could not come up with 5 to 8 people for a bit of a cross-section that we needed. So it's a little larger than that. But if you think about the faith-based industry group in Marin, it's really the how of our reopening. The first stage for us is, collecting best practices. We met this week, we're meeting again this week, and we'll talk about, here are some of the elements that we've noticed of best practices. Here's some Marin specific requests. Our conversation sort of centers on what's happening across faith communities. Are there documents that we can share? Which elements of this seem most relevant to what we're doing? What are some barriers and challenges to adhering to this? Not with the idea that it's a cookie cutter approach, but that it offers a baseline for flexibility of the how. Now, the when people ask about often, and certainly the shelter in place is beginning to ease in areas of the state and in areas of the county, in industry-specific groups of the county. But ultimately, the when of faith-based institutions will come from our public health director. Before the hows and the elements of what we're thinking about around congregational gatherings and food and rental space and the many components of faith-based groups, we'll need to our group will propose some things. We'll share them with the public health officer and the county council. Those folks will amend, correct, say, you guys did a perfect job, sign off, any number of those pieces, and they'll be posted to the website for everyone to see. So it won't be kept as a closed document. And then in a separate step, that might happen at the same time or might happen a little bit later, the public health official will say, based on where we are in Marin, the number of cases, the number of deaths, the testing capacity, hugely important, the contact tracing capacity. When people come into contact, and someone is infected, can we understand comprehensively who they went forward with over the last 10 days or 14 days? Those things will need to be in place for the county as a whole, and then reasonably possible for our industry group and our multiple diversity of approaches to how we engage before the win is set. So, and my role is to gather people, to select some folks for the group, to communicate with the county and to communicate with that team. Ultimately, the county's communication mechanism will share what the group did. But then also we're going to need close partners like all of you, and particularly Scott and MIC, to share the information out and, to invite more conversations like this. I'm imagining that our first phase of getting to some how bullet points over categories is going to be about 4 meetings. And then the group may have some level of hiatus until the win of the opening happens. And then the current thinking from those of us who are leading industry groups, and there are a number of industry groups, golf and parks and retail, but those of us who are leading and facilitating the industry groups, that we'd like some cohesion in that, for that same team to be able to come back together and talk about how things are going. And as you all have probably noticed from other communications, if things go well into the fall and we don't have a second wave that goes back up, we may be able to continue on this path. If things don't go well and the easing of shelter in place restrictions doesn't work out as well as we hope, we'll be regrouping and thinking about what the next steps are. So that's all for me. I hope that that was clear. We have most of the members of the working group listed on the website. That's updated every week. And that's it for me. So do you have questions for me or things like that?
Hi, I'm Cynthia Cochran-Kearney. Thank you for being here. One of my questions is, when you talk about opening faith communities, will there be a phase one where we can open our church offices and have small groups, and then there's worship and larger gatherings? But I wasn't sure when the shelter in place is lifted, can we have our offices open? Should I, wait a minute, do I mute myself?
You're muted.
Okay, here we are. Okay, so what I would say is a couple of things. We're looking at faith-based institutions in some of their multiple components. So their office space, some of you rent space on your property to other groups. So there will be a lifting of office space capacity, and then each group will need to take a look at, does that focus on me? So if you have office space and you can adhere to the office space reopening guidelines, you may be able to do that as a faith-based group even before faith-based activities come online. You'll need to fill out a form that I believe is already posted to the website. I shared it the other day with the working group, that looks at your capacity to competently control infection rates and to have social distancing. And an element of that will be office space and complying with the best practices. By going back to full operations, we think is going to be a really slow run up. It may be office space initially, it may be outdoor gatherings for faith-based institutions. It may be a litmus test of contact tracing, which will be very, very important. And each congregation or faith-based group may do it differently, but having a verifiable mechanism, having a lead person who's your COVID response person, being able to update the shelter in place social distancing form as you expand each level of your operations is going to be important. So you might say, okay, we've looked at the office space requirements and we fit that, we can do that. You'll fill out the form, you'll have a contact, there's some things you'll need to post at your space. There will be not a lot of heavy-handed enforcement, but there will be some checking in, and certainly lots more scrutiny if someone's infected, but there will be some checking in. And then that document would need to be updated when you wanted to go to congregational services. It would need to be updated if you're going to space rental services. Places like Spirit Rock that have a hoteling aspect of their work would need to look at the hotel aspect of the operation. In some ways, certain kinds of industry groups are conglomerates. They really have multiple aspects to their work that aren't as simple as maybe a retail store. You have a product, you need to get it out one way. Congregations and faith-based institutions have so much more.
I'm Bethany, by the way. This has been very helpful. You keep mentioning the website. Is it possible, could you like type the website in the chat? So
Absolutely.
That would be wonderful. Thank you for all your work.
Oh, thank you. It's my disaster service worker role, but it's also having been connected to community and to faith in multiple ways. It's working out well. I'd have to say that first call that I made to Scott, though, was a little bit breathless. Hi, Scott, I just got this role. Here's what I'm doing. But it's going well, so thank you. And I am inserting into the chat This page will go directly to the faith-based organizations page, but I encourage you to go to that top banner and really poke around in all of the broader sections, the staging for the County of Marin, look at some of the other industry groups and things like that.
So in MIC, we'll obviously share all the information and the links whenever that gets a little better defined in terms of here are the protocols, here's the timeline. So we'll keep sharing that. We're in our newsletter, and then we'll have some special emails just for religious leaders. And I'd also like, not to put you on the spot, but if you'd be willing to return sometimes once this is more finalized, and we can have a religious leaders gathering just on this and kind of explore all the more nitty-gritty questions that may come up.
And it would strengthen the work, so absolutely. Absolutely.
So what I'd invite you to do, if you have any other questions or input or things you're curious about, put those in the chat and I'll save the chat, and then I can share those with the entire working group, with Chantel and the whole working group. If there's some things that you're particularly concerned about for your faith community, or unusual situations, or just big picture questions, go ahead and put those in the chat, or you can email me and I'll be sure and forward those. Any final words for us before we?
Is it okay if I stay with you for the next few minutes until my
you
next
stay with
event?
us as long as you want. We're so grateful to have you with us.
Thanks, Scott. Nice to see everyone and hear you. And we'll follow.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Welcome back, everybody. So I hope you had a good conversation with your conversation partners. So it's our privilege today to have as our speaker, Elaine Tokolahi, who is not only just a wonderful treasure in our Marin Interfaith community, but also has served many roles throughout Marin County. So Elaine is a third-generation Marin resident and has over a decade of experience empowering volunteers and nonprofits. She began her career as a Tongan National Volunteer, where she served as a high school teacher in the South Pacific. Inspired by her experience, she went on to manage the Tongan National Volunteer Services host organization, the Tongan National Youth Congress, as its first director. And while in that role, she was appointed to international committees affiliated with the Commonwealth of Nations and the United Nations, where she advocated for the inclusion of young people's rights into public policy. Upon returning to the US, she worked at the Global Fund for Women, where she helped women's rights organizations in Asia and the Pacific secure core funding. Elaine's career took a local turn when she became a partnership specialist for immigrant and rural communities at the US Census Bureau, where she focused on building partnerships with grassroots leaders. She then spent close to 5 years at the American Red Cross Bay Area chapter, focusing her efforts on making national programming relevant to local underserved communities. She was the director of programs at San Francisco's Community Agencies Responding to Disaster, where she provided award-winning consulting services to nonprofits and faith-based organizations in emergency planning and continuity planning. And she is now director of volunteers for the Center for Volunteer and Nonprofit Leadership. Her personal favorite volunteer roles include reviewing scholarship applications, judging college student innovation contests, and serving as a board member of the Marin Interfaith Council, yay. And Elaine is a member of the Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of San Rafael. So Elaine, we are so grateful to have you with us, and welcome.
Scott, she just texted me and her computer is reloading. She says that she'll be right with us.
Ah, all right.
Sorry for the delay.
Well, let's do a quick poll then.
Okay.
We're gonna try something new. So while we're waiting for Elaine, I just put a poll as a follow-up. So hopefully this, I haven't tried this before, but hopefully you see this in your screen. If you want to just take the poll for a minute. All right, so just FYI, here are the results of the poll. And so this will be part of the conversation that we'll have at our next religious leaders gathering about revenue from rentals, and particularly about rentals and how those can be safely reopened. And also can talk about the concerns about the revenue related to that. And then, as we already talked about earlier, having a follow-up religious leaders gathering, and we have more information about what the reopening protocols are, and knowing that each of you has a little different situation. And so being able to have a conversation about that when those protocols come out and how they may need to be either adapted for your own situation, your faith community, and to be able to address those questions to Chantel and the working group. So as soon as that information is further along, we'll schedule that and let you know about that. So Elaine, I think you're back, and I just want to, I already introduced you, so I'm just going to unmute you and welcome you to go ahead and start sharing, please.
Okay, thank you so much. And I'm just dealing with a bit of a tantrum right now with my child. If you hear something in the background, it's just life happening. Okay, let me see here. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, Scott, can you please enable screen sharing for me? Okay, thank you. It's okay, she can stay here. Just stay here. I have a 5-year-old, and this is what happens sometimes. Go have a cookie. Okay. It's real life. All right. Can you see my screen? Let's see here. Scott, can you please give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen? Okay, perfect. Volunteering in Marin 2020 edition. All right. So I'm Baha'i, and in the Baha'i faith, service is considered to be prayer. And I know that your other faith traditions share this mentality in some way, and we'll look at some quotes as well that I've scattered into the presentation. But this is sort of rooted in how I work every day when I go to work at the local volunteer center, which is the Center for Volunteer and Nonprofit Leadership. Service is prayer. All effort and exertion put forth by man from the fullness of his heart is worship, if it is prompted by the highest motives and the will to do service to humanity. This is worship, to serve mankind and to minister to the needs of the people. Service is prayer. I thought I'd take a couple more quotes from our fellow traditions. This is from our brothers and sisters in the Christian faith. If anyone has material possessions and sees their brother and sister in need but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in them? Dear children, let us not love with words or tongues, but with actions and in truth. And one more. Do good unto your parents and near of kin, and unto orphans and the needy, and the neighbor from among your own people, and the neighbor who is a stranger, and the friend by your side, the wayfarer and your servants, for our brothers and sisters who are Muslim. So Scott mentioned my work. I am a person with different hats, but that's like you all. I know you all wear different hats. You're religious leaders, and you're parents and brothers and sisters or grandparents and members of the community. And so today I represent myself today and the hats that I wear, but I'm representing myself rather than any agency so that I can sort of freely be all aspects when I speak with you today and share these opportunities. So when I go to work, the essential service that I provide and that my team provides is volunteer matching. So we have an online website, which is an online portal where nonprofits and government agencies post volunteer opportunities, and volunteers can find those and fill them. Sometimes people want to come in or call or email, and it's a fulfilling experience because people come in sort of with a problem to be solved, and they come to me to help them figure out how to fix it. And the problem varies. So sometimes the problem is, I'm just retired and I don't know what to do with myself, and I'm bored all day and I really want to do something inspiring. What can I do? And I go, okay, we just met. Let's have a conversation and try to figure out what makes you tick and what you might love to do moving forward. Sometimes there are people who are referred to our organization from the court system, and they come in seeing service as a punishment, and with the prayers sort of inside of me as I meet people who have this kind of way of looking at service at first, I'm like, let's see how I can try and show them that service can be a gift in their lives instead of a punishment that the court is giving them. And it usually works. And that's really fulfilling. And then there's also high school students who come in, sometimes college interns, and they go, oh, I have hours to complete. I need to do this. I need to look good. And so I go, okay, well, how about we find something that might influence your career path instead, or in addition to fulfilling your 40 hours. So I see this role as trying to help people find meaning in giving to others, which is just super fun. And then when a disaster happens or an emergency like this pandemic, I turned into a manager of an emergency volunteer center. So, and that takes the skills and my staff too. Like, we all have these volunteer matching skills, and it's like on steroids. We have to just do it very quickly. All of a sudden there's an influx of needs, and we have to say, we're going to find people. Or sometimes, say in the 2017 fires, there's an influx of people and the needs aren't determined yet. And so we have to figure out, how are we going to match everybody and not cause a bigger problem? So an emergency volunteer center recruits and deploys volunteers to address priority needs, and those needs vary. So the needs are determined by the local government with input from the community, and the needs are also determined by nonprofit social service agencies or animal service agencies or environmental agencies, anybody that might need help related to the emergency at hand. And so the needs and the volume of volunteers changes with each emergency. Every single one is different. In the emergency services world, fire department, sheriff's department, things like that, volunteers kind of have a bad rap. They're seen as like a big problem to be dealt with. And so I kind of am trying to change that perspective, and it's working in areas. I have a great staff member in Napa who has really worked to shift that reputation of volunteers. And volunteers only become a problem when they're not managed by someone and they kind of just go rogue without direction. So in emergencies, what we do is figure out who has the right skill set, who's trustworthy, who's coming in sort of with the right intention, and who can we put to work. And then who do we ask, please volunteer when the times have changed. So we're in the middle of determining all of that now. So March, COVID-19 all of a sudden enters our community, and the volunteer sector saw this big shift. Okay. So before the outbreak, the majority of volunteers that my office came across every day were retirees over 65 looking for a way to give back on a regular basis, mostly during business hours. They could work mostly in office settings or school settings. And then we also saw a lot of high school youth, 8th graders actually, and high schoolers who were looking for hours to graduate. All of a sudden that shifted pretty much overnight. So after the outbreak, all of a sudden we saw all ages, people, volunteers of all ages in between, high school youth, and so age 18 and 65. And that age group is typically an age group that volunteers in the school setting. You know, they might volunteer in school districts without coming to us to be matched. And so it just created this whole issue where we were like, wait a minute, okay, nonprofits and government agencies need people in the age group that we have a kind of rough time recruiting anyway, but then all the schools are closed, so they're not volunteering. So we have to figure this out. So, you know, that's our job. So we put out a call for volunteers and also a call for volunteer opportunities. And then in my role with the VOAD, the Volunteer Organizations Active in Disaster, I try and get all the volunteer opportunities of participatory nonprofits and faith-based organizations and congregations to say, this is what we need and this is what we have. So it was just like this big shift that happened. The immediate needs, you probably saw these on the news, local news and national news. Food-related services were in complete need. So our food systems were just shaken up. So food banks, and I'll tell you the distinction. The food bank, you know, there are food banks in every county, or they may serve 2 counties like ours in Marin. So they have the bulk of food coming in, and then they distribute food to the food pantries, such as those that may be on site at your churches or your congregations. And so the food banks needed more volunteers and more food, and the food pantries eventually needed volunteers. And then school districts that fed children their daily regular meals of breakfast and lunch, all of a sudden couldn't open and then feed those kids. And so the immediate need was figure out which organizations need volunteers and then get them. And this is what these sort of packing services tended to look like. This is a feeding partner, extrafood.org, such an awesome organization. And they're filling bags for the food pantry at Bahia Vista School in Santa Fe. And so this had to pop up within days. And the school district was just wonderful. So this was all in, you know, stage 1 of COVID. And now our government leaders are talking about, we're going into stage 2. And so the volunteer sector is responding and is also getting a bunch of questions. What are our priorities? Can we volunteer? What can we do? What are the volunteer opportunities? Have they changed? And I think that they have changed. They are shifting. There is a need for contract tracers to get registered with the Marin Medical Reserve Corps. That is a group that comes out of the Public Health Department. Oh, can you turn the light off, please? Sorry, my 5-year-old is like turning on things. And they are looking for licensed or formerly licensed medical staff to be on call for that. There's also a big call for sewing face coverings. Your faith community might be sewing face coverings and donating. This is something that my own faith community got behind, and it's been really a lovely thing to see. We have some women who live alone, and they come from different countries, and their families are not in this country. And so they've been sewing up a storm and dedicating or donating the masks to Homeward Bound, Whistle Stop, the city of Santa Fe, and then there's a sewing group of sewists from the North Bay, from Marin and Sonoma counties, who take orders from all sorts of places. And so we keep getting pictures of these, you know, sort of socially isolated women in our faith community who are taking selfies of themselves just with masks all over, you know, dozens of masks, sometimes hundreds. It's just really heartwarming. Okay, my daughter again. Okay, here you go. virtual volunteering is starting to pop up as well. So virtual volunteering may include wellness checks via phone for agencies who have set this up. There's been a lot of talk about neighbor to neighbor also, which could be in person, you know, when you knock on someone's door, but then ideally it transitions into something via phone to minimize contact. Something popping up too is tax aid, you know, so our tax day was postponed, which gave some folks relief. And so tax aid is a role that is now on the phone or online. Census outreach is taking place. Census Day was supposed to be April 1st, I think. Is that right, Scott? Census Day is April 1st. And it has been pushed out. And so there's still a bit more time to return census questionnaires, and especially in historically undercounted communities, this is a big priority. So Canal Alliance is piloting this program where they're going to try to call as many residents in Marin County as possible, using the voter registration rolls to try and get them to turn in their census forms. I forget the percentage of people that have already turned in their forms. Maybe it was 50. Scott, do you know?
61% in Marin.
61%. So we still have quite a bit of Marin County residents left. And so the more, you know, census outreach that happens, the more funding can be allocated to our county. And there's virtual volunteer opportunities related to tutoring college students during the end of their semester and going into their summer school, and they're still going to be at home. Some of them may be at home until December or later, and they're Marin residents and they're going to college all over the country. And I'll show you who has these needs. And grant writers and other capacity building type of roles. There's a need for people, and a lot of times these sort of retirees who have past experience and a lot of time during the workday to write grants, to help just write articles for nonprofits. So these are popping up more and more as social service organizations establish their new flow in this stage. Oh, and this is just a picture of one of the ladies who is in my community, just smiling. She's just so happy. She's sewing face coverings for Whistle Stop. I thought I was being helpful to her by calling her and saying, "Oh, Ruhi, do you need me to call Whistle Stop for you?" And she was like, No. I already called them 4 times. I sewed 4 dozen. They come, they drop it off, they pick it up. I'm like, okay, that's great. So people have really taken off. So online volunteer matching, as I mentioned before, this is where you can find opportunities that your congregants can find opportunities on. volunteer.cvnl.org. And then I also want to point out the Marin City cooperation teams. I don't want to load it. I had it loaded up before, but my computer crashed because I had a bunch of windows open. But I'll tell you a story. The Marin City Cooperation Teams project was created by the school manager for the Sausalito Marin City School District. Jamir is his name. And so Jamir said, you know, we don't have school and we have a lot of families in need. So we're going to have food service. And then instead of just having like food pantry service, he then created a tutoring team. And then he created a mental health wellness check team. And they just kept going and going and going. So I really encourage you to check this out because it's one of the programs that has some remote opportunities if you want to work from home, or if you're willing to go out and interact with people with masks on, then you can help as well. And it's a high need community and it's run by such a great team. I want to shout out Covia Social Call as well. Covia Social Call is, Covia is the organization. Social Call is the program. And what they do is they match volunteers with socially isolated older adults. And so these are typically older adults who don't have any family in the area. They don't have a lot of contact. Generally, they are referred to COVIA, say from the local government agency. And so this is something that you can do where you keep in contact with a socially isolated senior on the phone. And I think the commitment, there's a certain time commitment involved so that you can develop a relationship. But the minimum involvement, I think, is around half an hour every week to give a call to folks like this. And it's really meaningful. Someone in my community has 3 different people that he calls on a regular basis, and he's just, he gets so much from them, and he volunteered to help them, and he gets so much from them. And then you may have seen Good Fairy on the news. This is a new initiative. When emergencies happen, people just, it's like this innate human desire to help. All of a sudden, people just flood, to the sites, or, there's just this overwhelming need to be altruistic. And so goodfairy.org was founded here in Marin, and it matches up socially isolated people with typically older adults with volunteers who are called Good Fairies, who run errands for them, who mow lawns and stuff like that. And it's really taken off. It got covered in the San Francisco Chronicle. Just really good-hearted folks can get registered on there, both to give and also to receive help. So I was going to say, look at the websites, but let's not crash the computer. Okay. Now you might be thinking, oh, of course, this is great. I'll pass this on to my congregation and then people will just want to volunteer. Well, maybe. So the top reasons why people volunteer are indeed to do something good for others. And also they were asked specifically to do something. Sometimes people will see an advertisement for volunteering and they'll go, oh, that's nice. But if you say, will you please sign up for this specific thing? And then they'll go, okay, yeah, I'll do that. Or can you please visit this specific neighbor? And then that compels people to volunteer. Now that gets people started volunteering. But in order to stick with volunteering, there's some other bits of knowledge that I want you to consider. So what fuels continued volunteerism? The simplified answer is fulfillment. So, and doing good is fulfilling in itself, but there's a little bit more of a complicated answer here. When I talk to some folks, I'll say, what keeps you in this role? And the answer that I hear is, well, I came for the cause. I came for the mission. I was really compelled, but I stay because I like all the people here. Or if you volunteer with animals, I stay because I like all the animals and I like the other volunteers and I like the staff and I feel good here. There are people who theorize about everything. And so there are people who theorize about social motivations related to volunteering. And so one of the motivations is achievement. Can they feel like they are achieving something in volunteering? And when I ask people to volunteer and I have a feeling that they are motivated by achievement, I'll put it into a way that's like, hi, Sally, did you know that you could fill 50 bags of food, which would allow you to serve 200 people by just volunteering for 4 hours next week? And that achievement, which is really specific of like getting all those people fed, is just really exciting, like for that person. Another form of achievement or another form of motivation is affiliation. Some people are not volunteering because they can't volunteer together. They love volunteering as a part of a team. It's really important. So if people are interested in volunteering, but they don't want to because they don't just they can't see themselves going alone, then you can encourage them, why don't you all volunteer together? Why don't you volunteer as a family? You know, or if you're a couple, the couple can volunteer together so that they can feel that they're getting some camaraderie in their volunteering. And then there's influence. Influence, I think of this in volunteering as like leadership. They like managing things. They can see the big picture. And so if you have someone in your congregation that you think would be so good at volunteering, it's good to find a leadership position for them. Maybe they could go to the Marin City team and talk about, you know, are there any lead volunteer positions available? And that would be a good match for them. What would your congregants like to do? I know we're kind of running low on time, but if you have some ideas in the chat box, I'd love to read them and hear them out. And what we're going to do to just kind of bring this back to the written word is what I like to do, is very Baha'i as well. We start with the word and then we close with the word. We have a pop quiz of name the religion. Okay, so name the religion. I'm going to read you writing, holy writing, and then you are going to write in the comment box the religion that you think it is. And unfortunately, I can't see the comment box, I think, from where I am with this view, but I'll read and then give you a few seconds. Here we go. If there will be among you a needy person from one of your brothers, you shall not harden your heart, and you shall not close your hand from your needy brother. Rather, you shall open your heart to him. You shall surely give him, and your heart shall not be grieved when you give to him. For because of this thing, the Lord your God will bless you in all your work and in all your endeavors. For there will never cease to be needy within the land. 1, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh, from the Torah, Judaism and Christianity in the house. Okay, here's another one. If beings knew, as I know, the fruit of sharing gifts, they would not enjoy their use without sharing them, nor would the taint of stinginess obsess the heart and stay there. Even if it were their last bite, their last morsel of food, they would not enjoy its use without sharing it, if there were anyone to receive it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Buddhism. Buddhists in the house. Okay. In the beginning, humankind and the obligation of selfless service were created together. Through selfless service, you will always be fruitful and find the fulfillment of your desires. This is the promise of the Creator. What do you think? 5, 4, 3, 2. Hinduism. Hindus in the house. I only have 2 left. It is incumbent upon every man of insight and understanding to strive to translate that which hath been written into reality and action. That one indeed is a man who today dedicateth himself to the service of the entire human race. Anyone? 4, 3, 2. Baha'i faith. Had to throw that in there. I'm Baha'i. I see Alberta. Hi, Alberta. I miss you. That was great. Okay, and then one more is kind of a trick one. This is for one of my fellow coworkers who we have deep spiritual conversations about service at work. The spiritual preparation of the aspirant can never be termed complete unless he has learned the art of rendering service. This is from the followers of Meher Baba, who was a proclaimed avatar of God. And the Baha'i faith, you know, I'm Baha'i. I have a coworker who is a follower of Meher Baba, and our teachings just go like this. And when we are so frustrated at work because of something so human and bureaucratic, we just go, okay, let's center ourselves. Let's talk about service. Let's say these prayers. And then afterwards, like, we're good. We're doing this for God, the greater good. Not a problem. Oh, I didn't realize I have one more. Yeah, last one. Rendering help to another is the function of all human beings. Ta-da! Jainism. Didn't know that. Okay. Please keep in touch. This is my information. I need to clear my voicemail. I'll do that right after this, I promise, so that you can leave a message and I'll call you back from home. Give me a call. I'll give Scott my PowerPoint presentation so that you can refer to it if you'd like, take some of those quotes. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Elaine. And
Thank you.
we have just a few minutes left, so I've unmuted everybody. If you have a question that you would like to ask Elaine, we have time for maybe 2 questions, and then I'll bring us to a close.
And feel free to call if you have a question about a specific person, you know, in terms of what do you think would be good for this person. I'm happy to come up with some ideas, you know, specific organizations that could work for that specific person. It's a lot of fun helping people find a way to find meaning in giving to others. It's great. Oh, Scott, we are not able to unmute, said Elizabeth.
Everyone, most people are. I'll try again. It should.
I did.
Okay.
There we go.
Hi. My computer crashed. I was so sorry. Just got to influence the 3 motivators, achievement, affiliation. So what did you say about influence as a motivator?
Oh, more like leadership. Someone who who can see the big picture, you know, and can motivate others to do good work.
And they want to volunteer in order to be that role, you're saying?
Yeah. Or they get some meaning from that. It keeps them going. And so they want to give, and then they also personally have that desire.
Thank you.
Elaine, is there any age limit to volunteering?
No. So it depends on the organization. There are some places like Whistle Stop that want to protect people age 65 and older from volunteering in person. They just don't want anyone to get sick. And so they're saying that virtual volunteering is best, volunteering from home. But there are some places, if you're willing, if you want to go and work at food pantries, then, you know, if you want to wear masks and you're confident and want to take the risk, then you can sign up.
That would be great.
Elaine? Hi, you can hear me?
Is that Mark?
Yeah, it's Mark.
Hi, Mark.
I guess the question for me is it's kind of overwhelming to know what is the greatest need. So I went to Rodef Shalom's website, their volunteering site, and I checked off the box other, and I said, what do you need most right now?
Mm-hmm.
And one of my fellow Torah study friends, she is she's probably over 70, healthy 70, but what she's finding, she's picked 5 people to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that that's been very fulfilling for her. Mm-hmm. But I guess the greatest need is that I know that I can't do any medical because if you're over 65, too high of a risk. But what
you could be a tracer.
Okay.
You could be a contact tracer with your experience in the medical field. I
Okay.
think that the Medical Reserve Corps would just love you very much.
Because of my medical background, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else that is really sticking out in terms of need for volunteer activity?
It depends on the county. So in our county right now, which is good, we're in a lull which is very good. So the need changes depending on the status of the pandemic. So at present, because of this lull, nonprofits especially are getting sort of their ducks in a row and are getting their systems in place with the volunteers that they have. But there's still a need for Sarah's project, you know, for cooks to serve people who have illnesses in their families. What else is there? There's still food related opportunities, but the need changes almost weekly. And I put it on the website, volunteer.cvnl.org. I guess that's like my short answer is to check on there, because I'll get a call from someone and that person will say, oh my gosh, we just lost our whole, you know, say the National Guard was helping at the food bank and they decided to pull out and they can't come here anymore. We need 50 people to come tomorrow. I'm like, okay, let's calm down. But it kind of pops up like that. So I would check regularly. Oh, I see. Okay, Stephanie, I got your message about donating food. Okay, so Stephanie asked about food donations, and the Marin, San Francisco Marin Food Bank is not taking food donations at present, but if you would like to donate food, the Redwood Empire Food Bank in Sonoma County is taking food donations. So it would be very welcome there in case someone wants to drive. That could even be a volunteer opportunity. I encourage you to think of things like that. You know, if there's if you have something and you don't have a way to transport it, somebody will want to do it for you, and I'll likely know those people because they sign up on our. We had something like 700 volunteers just sign up just in case, so we can put it out there. Hey, can anybody go and pick up the overflowing bin of food, and then they'll take it.
Thank you so much, Elaine, for today, and thank you for your wisdom and for all the great resources. So everybody, thank you for joining us today. If you have any remaining questions, feel free to put it in the chat box, or you can email me. Again, there's our website that has where you can look at all the upcoming activities, and we will let you know by email when the follow-up Religious Leaders Gathering is, when we have more information about the Marin Recovers reopening process. And also if you're not signed up for a newsletter, please do, because we have in there constantly ways to help. We have the links that Elaine talked about to CVNL and opportunities to volunteer and community needs and opportunities to provide face masks. A lot of the things that she talked about today are already on our website, on our COVID page, but they're also linked in our newsletter that comes out every 2 weeks. So that's probably the best way we can offer to keep in touch. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today, for being part of this ongoing effort to create a community where everyone thrives and is well, and also to join in the work of Marin Interfaith Council as we build community, advocate justice, and celebrate our faith. And you'll see in there Elaine's email, so feel free to email her with any outstanding questions. And I'm gonna unmute us all again and just invite us all to just say goodbye and wish everybody well and send out our loving, healing blessings. Thank you for all that you're doing in so many different ways to provide healing in our community. And thank you again, Elaine, so much for being with us today and guiding us.
So honored to be in this group of people. Thank you so much. It's humbling.
Scott, I absolutely loved meditation last Wednesday. It was the most meaningful one for me that I've ever heard. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Well, thank you, Norma. And that's a nice reminder, because I didn't mention it. We have a meditation on the second Wednesday of every month. And so the next one will be, it's always at 5:30. Next one will be online again. It'll be Dr. Laylee first, leading us in a Sufi meditation. She's with the International Association of Sufism. That link will be in our newsletter and also on our website. So please join us again, 5:30, Wednesday, June 10th. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us, and blessings.